reputation of Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox. Despite his service for the Third Reich, he's sometimes described as courageous, dashing, and dynamic, even by his enemies. His arrival in North Africa in 1941 signaled a major shift in the theater. His victories and panzers would make him a legend and Hitler's favorite. However, Rommel's North African adventure ended in total defeat. So just how did the Allies kick the Desert Fox out of Africa? In January 1941, British victory in North Africa seemed almost complete. Crusader tanks like this one at the Tank Museum Bovington were part of the British-led Western Desert Force that consistently pushed back Italian forces, captured Tobruk, and now threatened the major Italian port of Tripoli. With Mussolini's North African Empire in tatters, he approached Adolf Hitler for assistance. Hitler considered North Africa a campaign of secondary importance, but a total Italian collapse could spell disaster for the Axis alliance. Hitler agreed, and on January 11th issued Directive No. 22 to hold the region of Tripolitania. He sent General Erwin Rommel to fulfill this request. Rommel was a rising star in the Wehrmacht, having led the 7th Panzer Division during the invasion of France. His audacious approach, including seemingly materializing unexpectedly behind the enemy, had earned his division the nickname Gespensterdivision, the Ghost Division. However, he was not supposed to go on the offensive in North Africa. His Afrika Korps was formerly under Italian command and was only to act as a Speerverband, a blocking detachment, whose goal was preventing further British penetration. Rommel's superiors in the Oberkommando der Wehrmacht forbade any advance other than reconnaissance patrols. Rommel sensed the loophole, and he advanced against Commonwealth troops in March. The British hadn't expected an attack until May and were exhausted after fighting the Italians. Despite far inferior forces, Rommel outflanked the British-led 8th Army's static defenses and spread panic. The British tried but failed to reform the line, and they withdrew from Cyrenaica in disorder. Only Tobruk, defended by Australian infantry, held out. British attempts to relieve it in May and June came to little, and now, at the end of his supply lines, Rommel besieged the port. In any case, his superior, General Franz Halder, stopped him from going any further. Although Rommel's insubordination frustrated his commanders, Hitler was jubilant. He promoted Rommel to general of the newly formed Panzergruppe Afrika, giving him command of both the Afrika Korps and the Italian 20th Corpo d'Armata. This also strengthened the direct relationship between Rommel and the Führer. Rommel was quickly becoming Hitler's favorite. But soon the limelight shifted away from North Africa. On June 22, 1941, Germany invaded the Soviet Union. Hitler decreed that the Libyan War would continue, but only after Operation Barbarossa. On the British side, new Western Desert Force Commander General Sir Claude Auchinleck had other ideas. The hard-pressed Tobruk garrison needed relief, and on November 18, 1941, Auchinleck launched Operation Crusader. After seaborne commando raids, the 8th Army surged ahead, taking Rommel by surprise. Heavy armored clashes broke out throughout the desert, especially at the Sidi Rezai airfield. Despite initial setbacks, German troops slowly gained the upper hand. Rommel now sensed the battle's decisive moment had arrived. On November 24th, he personally took control of the 21st Panzer Division and raced after the retreating British 7th Armored Division and towards the Egyptian border. He hoped to repeat the successes of early 1941 and trigger a chaotic rout. His gamble, later called the Dash to the Wire, was a bold one, but it failed. Despite Rommel advancing up to 60 kilometers, the 8th Army did not collapse. Auchinleck reasoned that Rommel must be reaching his supply limit, and he was right. Rommel lacked the fuel to complete his dash and had to divert to Bardia to resupply. Meanwhile, New Zealand troops took advantage of the 21st Panzer's absence to force their attack and link up with the troops in Tobruk. The dash to the wire may have cost Rommel a narrow victory. Over the next few weeks, the 8th Army brought in fresh reserves like the 2nd South African Division. Rommel tried to counterattack, but realized that he couldn't keep up against the mounting pressure and ordered a retreat. At the end of the year, he was back where he had started 9 months earlier. Undeterred, Rommel planned his next assaults. Now close to Tripoli, he improved his logistics and developed a strong defensive position known as the Cauldron. The British were slow to capitalize on their success, and so once again, Rommel went on to the offensive. On May 26, 1942, Axis forces moved towards Be'er Hakim and captured it on June 10th. Rommel turned his attention north, surrounding and hitting Allied forces from multiple sides, which forced their withdrawal. The British abandoned their offensive plans and poured reserves into just holding the line. On June 21st, Axis forces arrived at Tobruk to find the original defenses mostly disbanded. Panzers broke through, capturing 35,000 mostly South African defenders. A fortress that had previously held out for 9 months now fell in just 2 days. Hitler was pleased, and Rommel was promoted to Generalfeldmarschall. He later recalled this moment of success. For every one of my Africans, that 21st of June was the high point of the African War. The battered 8th Army, with barely 70 tanks left, limped back to the coastal town of El Alamein. Axis forces continued to attack, but their tanks came up against better prepared Allied positions. R.I. Cunningham, an anti-tank gunner with the Royal Horse Artillery, recalled a duel with a Panzer on July 3rd. The enemy withdrew, leaving 5 tanks on the field. The northernmost of these, a Panzer IV, was stopped but not destroyed, and was firing steadily with high explosives at my gun. The battery commander came up and told me to cease firing, as ammunition was extremely low. I expostulated, but the battery commander was firm. He turned and had walked some 18 meters when a high explosive shell from the same tank went over our heads and exploded beside him, wounding him seriously in the throat. I fear I then disobeyed orders and wrecked the tank with just 2 more rounds. British Prime Minister Winston Churchill urged Auchinleck to counterattack, but the general informed him that the 8th Army was exhausted. Churchill fired him for his hesitation and eventually replaced him with Bernard Law Montgomery. Montgomery, though, realized that Auchinleck was right. 8th Army needed rest and retraining, and the El Alamein position was a strong one. With the sea to the north and the impassable Katara Depression to the south, the front narrowed to only 40 kilometers, which robbed Rommel of his ability to maneuver. Meanwhile, British signal intelligence revealed the German plan. Montgomery decided to allow Rommel to attack in the south